All right, guys, welcome back. This is part two of Outside the Podcast. This is the state of Jordan retros, a new product. We're still talking about that. If you missed the first show, check down below. There's a link that'll take you to that so you can get caught up on the first part of this episode. But I'm not here by myself again. I'm here with Brandon, Nick, and our special guest today is Russ Bengtson. So let's get right back into the conversation and start off with the Westbrook Zero. Russ, on the first show, you mentioned the Westbrook Zero and the future you kind of see for Jordan Brand as far as outside of their retro. Outside of their retro product. How do you see the Westbrook Zero being a standalone product, or kind of ushering in a new era, I guess, of shoes that people look for outside of retros for Jordan?
I mean, I think it can. I don't know if the relative success or non-success, which I don't know, of the Westbrook, would really speak towards whether it works or not. Maybe it's the guy, maybe it's the design, maybe it's whatever. I just feel like, assuming the product plays a role in sales and the style plays a role, there's just so much more you can do with an off-the-court shoe instead of on the court. I feel like for Jordan especially, flight plate's obviously been a thing. The encapsulated Zoom Air in the forefoot, everything's moving towards a synthetic upper with some sort of external heel counter. There's sort of a best way to do it as far as a performance product. And if it's going to be an on-court shoe, you're sort of, the style ends up being dictated, at least in part, by the technology. And by doing an off-court shoe, you're kind of freed from all that. You can do literally anything. So I just think that opens things up a lot more. And, you can sort of work it based on what you think might sell or what a guy's personal taste truly is. I think with an on-court product, like, you're limited to carving names in the outsole or putting a number somewhere on it. There's so many small things you can do, but if you really want to show someone's personality in a shoe, I feel like off-court's kind of the way to go.
So, Nick, you mentioned this, and I'll bring it into the conversation here. Like, there's the Jordan Future and the Jordan Shine. Now, I absolutely loved the Jordan Future when it first popped up. I think, Russ, you were the first one to actually post pictures of the Jordan Future, right?
Yeah, I think so. Officially.
Officially, you had the first official shots. I love that shoe. I thought it was great, but I feel like Jordan Brand kind of ruined it with colors, so to speak. Like, they launched so many different versions of it in really a short time span. That kind of left that one in its own world. But one key part of that was that it was like based on a legacy product. Same thing for the Jordan Shine. Now, the Jordan Shine looks like a pretty cool shoe. Looks like the quality was there, but the pricing was outside of the norm for a Jordan Brand shoe, to say the least. So Nick, I guess to kind of piggyback on Russ here and to start this conversation, can Jordan Brand live creating a separate silhouette, or must there be some sort of connection to the past, like with the Jordan Brand, about the Jordan Shine and the Jordan Future?
I think both can exist. I think that, kind of like what we were talking about earlier, there's something about that classic styling. The Future to me was a really dope shoe, but it definitely was a newer feeling shoe, and I think that's why it was popular, because it was like, oh, I've got a casual shoe, it has new style, but I'm also not paying, there's that Jordan 11 feel, but you're not paying that Jordan 11 price. And, I think that's where the Shine kind of missed the mark, is that it was just way too expensive. And I get what Jordan was trying to do with it. Like, all of their athletes are buying, Balenciagas. Like, everybody that was any celebrity of any sort was buying Balenciagas for the last 2 years or whatever. So there was kind of a reason to try it out, but I think that, we kind of all saw that it didn't really work out the way maybe they had hoped. But I do think that, like, a shoe like the Westbrook Zero has the opportunity to to kind of pick up where that shoe left off, in a sense, where that like the style of an off-court shoe, like Russ said, is what people want to wear, what the general public wants to wear. Now, is Russell Westbrook the right person for that shoe and Jordan Brand? I don't know. I don't necessarily think so. But that's also because I'm comparing him to Michael Jordan, and Michael had the swag of a ball player off the court. Those Jay-Z lyrics are couldn't be any truer, and you just don't see that in today's athletes. Like even with somebody like LeBron, who is, in my opinion, the best basketball player in the world right now, he doesn't have the same confidence that Jordan had when Jordan was playing, and that's the like it almost comes across as insecurity now, where with Michael, I mean, we all got to experience it, and like we were talking about earlier, maybe we did experience the best time ever for what we're doing and for what we enjoy. But I don't know, like to me, like that question might be even better answered by Brandon. He's a little bit more stylish when it comes to that stuff than I am. I'm pretty basic when it comes to my style choices.
Yeah, I'm not really sure. I mean, as far as what Jordan's done with some of the style stuff has been kind of hit or miss. I would agree with what all you guys have said in terms of the future. It just got oversaturated too quick. Same thing that they've done with Roshi, same things they've done with everything else. Had they left it at a certain level and did it the right way, it could have been a really big deal for them. Because, yeah, the price was cheaper than the 11, but it looked like the 11. In terms of like $400, high-end Jordans, even with the Pinnacle, I don't know how well those have sold. I could be dead off on this, but I just think like the average person, if I'm going to spend $400 on a pair of sneakers, like I'm going to go for a pair of Common Projects or something to that extent. Like I'm not going to spend it on Jordan Brand no matter what kind of product they put out, just because it doesn't make a lot of sense. It's, to me, the same as getting like a fully loaded Volkswagen for $40,000 versus getting, an entry-level Audi for the same price. Like it doesn't equate. It's not the same thing. So it'll be really interesting to see how they move forward with some of the lifestyle stuff. I feel they could definitely get it down. I think they have a stable of athletes where they could definitely get it accomplished. It just needs to be thought out right, and the design's got to be on point, and then it comes to a point where you can't really deny it.
I was just going to say, like, that kind of makes me wonder, like, you mentioned $400. I don't know how you guys feel about it, but for $400, like, honestly, I'd rather have black cement 3s, Nike Air on the back, and the quality of leather that came on the shattered backboards. Like, that shoe to me is worth $400. I'm not saying that I want to spend $400 on it, but like that's the only shoe I could possibly imagine paying $400 and not feeling like.
Well, how much are the white cement 4s that are coming out next year? Are they $250?
I'm not sure.
I think those are going $250. I mean, I agree with you, Nick, all day. I'd pay $250 for shoes like that done the right way. I think we used to joke about it in email threads all the time when we were at Complex, like, don't release these retros for $150 and make them look like complete garbage. And I'm not even talking about Jordan Brand. I'm actually talking about a lot of other brands that did it completely wrong. Like, bring it back the way it was supposed to, with the right technology, the right kind of leather, the right colorways, not starting off with a colorway that the player never wore. Do it right that way and charge me $200. I'll gladly pay for it. But when you give me garbage for $150, I'm never going to mess with it again.
I mean, I just wonder, like, maybe that kind of goes back to like the future of retro thing, but I wonder, if there's almost a tiered thing you can do where it's like there's sort of almost like jerseys where there's almost a mass market, quote unquote swingman version of a Jordan 3 with a Jumpman on the back that's not super great, that's like $150, and then there's the premium like Nike Air on the back. The materials are all right, and it's like $300 or $400. That's like, the Mitchell and Ness jersey equivalent. I think there's always going to be people who are willing to pay that much, and like it's silly to make everyone kind of buy that lowest common denominator shoe. Like if you just want one that kind of looks like that, okay, fine, you can buy this. But if you actually want something high quality or something like you remember, then you have this higher price option. And sure, that's not for everyone, but neither are Maybachs, neither are Mitchell and Ness jerseys. Like, there should be different versions of the same shoe, maybe.
And maybe
I'd push that.
Yeah, and maybe that is, like the future of retro. Maybe maybe it's a Nike ID type of thing, and you really get to choose to, oh, am I going to wear these and I'm going to beat the hell out of them and only spend 150, 250, whatever it is, or I'm going to buy like that one pair that I know I'm going to baby, I'm going to take care of it, and it's going to be the Jordan 3 that I wear moving forward, and I pay the $400 and feel like I'm wearing, the best of the best.
I would say, so my thing, if I'm paying $300 or $400 for the shoe, like, I don't think that I'll be buying another one for another 5-10 years. Like, I would, that, like, to me, that's like buying a really nice dress shoe. And, for dress shoes, you can pretty much wear those for the most part for the rest of your life. You get them polished up and cleaned up or whatever, but, you keep them nice, you can wear those for the rest of your life. And that's where I think $300-$400 for a black Cement 3. Don't get me wrong, I'd probably play it regardless. But the point being, I don't know. I don't think people, if people are going to pay that much, it has to be at a quality level from Jordan Brand that I don't think we've seen with anything yet.
But here's the thing, though. People are paying that much now, on the resale market or whatever. Like, I mean, look at Flight Club prices for some of those things. It's like a pair of the last retro black Cement 3s I think they're going for that much, if not more. And I think I wore mine like probably 10 times and gave them away because it was like, they're just not the same. They just didn't work for me. I would gladly spend that same resale price at retail for a pair that was done right. It's like, I feel like it's been so long with all of us having to settle for whatever the one retro of a shoe is, and you'll buy it because it's like, oh, because it's this shoe, and you don't have a choice. But if you have a choice, like, yeah, I'll gladly spend.
I didn't even touch the Nike Air Ups that came back last year. That was like my first pair of Nikes growing up. That was the shoe that got me hooked when they had the black and blue kind of player edition with the one on the back for Penny Hardaway. When they brought those back, I that's probably the most excited I was for a retro shoe to come out in the last 5-7 years or whatever. And when they dropped that, I mean, between the materials, because it went over to Nike Sportswear, them not even releasing it in the black and blue colorway, they did like every colorway but that. I mean, I can't buy that stuff. Personally, I'm not even going to spend $120 or something like that. I think they were on sale for close to $50 at one point, and I still couldn't do it.
I mean, I kind of fell for it. I'm a sucker for that stuff. But yeah, it was like that. That's a great example because the material was like kind of like almost like that vacuum tech stuff that came out a few years back. It wasn't actually like leather. It was, the panels weren't stitched together. It was actually just formed. And I mean, that's something I think like will kill any type of retro from any brand, from whatever it is, because there's a certain element of like, okay, you can do this with an Air Max 90 or an Air Max 1, and you can add a little bit of technology, and you can still have a good, comfortable shoe. But those Air Ups were, incredibly uncomfortable, and like I waited for them to go on sale because they sat so long. But it's definitely one of those things where, you see a lot of the Nike basketball stuff come back in a a twisted version of some sort where it's not fully 100% what it was. And that to me is why that business seems to have struggled over the last couple of years, because they've brought back some great silhouettes over the last 3-4 years. Like a shoe like the Go LWP, if you watched basketball back in the 90s, that was a shoe you wanted or you had regardless. We all know how well that shoe performs on court. But then when it came back, like the market's so saturated with all this other crap that just doesn't live up to anybody's expectations, that when they do bring back something that was good, because the LWP, the retro version, was actually pretty good, and I picked up a few colorways of it, and I was definitely happy with them. I'm glad I did, but they didn't sell well, comparatively to anything else, in my opinion. So.
Well, I mean, even the Command Forces, it's like I thought that Billy Boyle color of the Command Forces would go right away, because anytime anyone talked about like, oh, what do you wish would get retro, and it's like Command Force would always come up.
Yep.
And I feel like by the time it came out, at $200, and then they put out like 5 different colors of it in pretty quick fashion, like I was still pretty surprised that original, neon colorway went on sale. But it's true. It's like there's so much other stuff.
Yeah,
It's
definitely.
like you kind of have to make decisions at a certain point. Like a $200 shoe, I mean,
Yeah, agreed.
it's a big investment.
Agreed. Can we? So would you guys agree to like a retro consortium, for lack of a better word, kind of like Adidas does with like the shell toes or whatever, where they do like the consortium? You think that would be a better solution, where they have like a consortium retros, where it's like the ones, the threes, the fours, the fives, that are just these high quality versions of the shoe, and then there's the normal everyday ones that are available all the time.
I think that's how you get people to realize the difference and give them the option to pay for premium. But like the way Adidas does it, with most of that being some sort of collaboration. I don't think we'll see. I don't think we'll see Jordan do collaboration with retros, on a level like that for a long time, just because they still, even though they're falling off in the marketplace right now, they're falling off because they're not selling to the mainstream consumer, but they're still selling through that product, whether it's to, a slight discount on footlocker.com or to a reseller. They're still getting through that product, and they're making their money off of it. But
I mean, I look at it like just like the basic Stan Smith. I mean, that white green Stan Smith, when they re-released it, they did like a basic model that sold at like Foot Locker or Foot Action or wherever for like $80,
yep,
or I don't even know, maybe 70 something. And then there was like the 115 or 120 version that they sold at like Barney's.
yep,
That had the proper flat tongue and the better leather and stuff. I mean, I think it's more like that, where it's like sure, like to the casual observer, they basically look the same. And if you're that casual consumer, of course you're going to buy the cheaper one because that's all you really want. But if you really care about how they're made, and you want something that's going to wear in, and like sort of like Jacques said, where you can wear it for a while and it breaks in, and it's like a dress shoe, like it wears in, then you're going to pay for the more expensive one because that's what you want.
yeah, definitely.
I think it's just giving more options.
I agree. As much as dope as I think that would be, I feel like Jordan Brand wouldn't do that because they would feel like the Jumpman logo would represent a lower tier than the Nike tier, and the Jordan Brand situation is always like we are the premium product kind of thing. And so as much as I would love that, and I think you guys are dead on, they would have to find some other way to differentiate them because they couldn't put a Jumpman on it.
I mean, you're already doing it. You know what I mean? Like all you're doing is making a higher end version. Like you're not making a cheaper one. You're already making the cheaper one. The cheaper ones are what's
True.
being
I mean,
sold
you already.
now. Maybe the sevens. I guess the sevens are better. Like some of the remastered stuff has certainly been better. But you're trying to like sell to both. You're trying to use one product to sell to two really different markets. I mean, there's the people who just want to buy the stuff, throw the box out, and wear them just to have whatever the newest stuff is. And then there's the people like me and like us who are all freaking crazy, who look at, like, to use an example, that latest Barkley 94 retro, and it's like, wait a minute, the eyelet pieces on the original were black and they're white on this retro. I don't want this anymore.
That's such and like. Go ahead, Russ. I'm sorry. I was going to get frustrated and go on a rant, but go ahead.
No, and all I'm saying is, like, now, like, if you're the freaking hyper detail oriented consumer like me or Nick or any of you guys, your only choice is to be like, well, all right, I don't want this, or be like, oh well, I wanted the white Barclays, so I guess I got to get these.
Yeah.
All it is like offering another option. I can go, if I'm a Magic Johnson fan, I can go to the NBA store and I can buy an Adidas Swingman Magic jersey for like $90, and that's cool. But if I'm like a super Magic fan, I can buy a $260 Mitchell and Ness one. And if I'm the super fan, that's the one I want. If I just want to wear it to rep Magic, then there's that other one.
One thing that I want to say real quick, kind of back to what Jacques said, as far as would Jordan Brand do that with the the tier, the level of the quality of it. Aren't they already doing that with the Jordan 1 between the OG high with the Nike Air all over it versus what they're doing with the Jordan mid that typically just has the Jumpman logo and it's $20-$30 cheaper. I know that's a little bit different than what we're talking about, but to an extent, they've already started doing that with the Jordan 1.
They definitely have. There's definitely a difference in the materials and the quality on those highs versus, the
and even just the logo that they're choosing to use.
Jumpman logo. Yeah, but I also think that, you're talking about, I don't have very many ones. I just haven't had any luck getting them. But, the shattered backboards are the only ones that I have that, I could say, that material, if that quality of leather was on all the rest of the Jordans, I would definitely be more apt to buy a significant amount more, because when I got those, it wowed me. I was shocked at how good it was when I pulled them out of the box. And that hasn't happened in a long time. Even with some of the other remasters that I bought, it was okay, this is good, but it's not the difference between Foot Locker and Barney's like it was with a Stan Smith. That's a good point that Russ made, where, you're talking about two completely different consumers and customer bases there. But if you have the option, and maybe that's a way they could go in the future. Maybe it's, you're buying the I just want to wear these, the NBA store jersey version of the Jordan at Foot Locker or Finish Line or whatever, and you're buying the Barney's version or the Mitchell & Ness version, if you will, at Barney's or wherever else.
No, but I agree 100%. I love the idea. I'm all for it. If there's anybody listening that has the power to make that happen, let's do that. I think they'll have a lot happier customers, and a lot of the complaining and stuff that you see happening online would hopefully go away in the sneaker world. But I mean, we'll have to see the quality. On those shatter backboards, I don't have a pair, but I've held a pair. It sounds weird. And they're definitely good. I feel like the same thing with those the Oreo 4s, the black 4s, those black 4s that came out. Those felt really good and solid, really nice quality. But we'll see where it goes. So let's talk signature line now with Jordan Brand. Obviously, we have a lot to talk about retros, and we can go on about retros because that seems like the dominant thing. But something that is interesting to me is the path of the signature line. How did they get the signature line back to where it's a pinnacle product? I feel like the signature product just happens. It's just they almost feel obligated to do it now, and it doesn't carry the same weight that a Jordan signature product used to. Is that a product of today's just retro environment where everyone is so enthralled with retro product? Or is that something that Jordan Brand can do to really make that transition? And I'll kind of start this off with just saying, I feel like the 29 was the first time in a couple years that the signature line really stood on its own and really had its own life. Obviously, it was attached to Dwayne Wade before and all the other stuff that happened with it. But the 28 started with the 28, where it was the technology was really something different enough that people were really oh, okay, this is something different. And then they had the 29, where it was okay, this is great. The materials on the upper is great. The feel is great. It plays wonderfully on the court. And, today it's still one of my favorite shoes to actually play in, to this day. But then I feel like it just kind of fell off. There was nothing else there. They had they talked about the pixel count on the upper and how they could do all these cool things with the upper, but none of that stuff really materialized. I'll throw this to you, Nick. What do you see Jordan Brand going from here with the signature line?
I mean, I think it's tough to have a signature for a player that doesn't play. And if Russell Westbrook is the face of Jordan Brand, no offense, he's not Michael Jordan, and he's not LeBron James. You could argue that he's fourth, fifth, maybe even lower on the best players in the league right now, because he hasn't won a title. He's playing with KD, and you could have that whole argument of, oh, Michael had Scottie Pippen and all of those things, but he just isn't the type of person you put a signature and run an entire, you will never see Westbrook shoes as a subsidiary of Nike. And I think that's the thing that is the biggest challenge for Jordan Brand with when it comes to business. Like their retro product is significant because of Michael Jordan, and the newer stuff. Like I love the 28. I thought it was great. I thought the SE without the shroud was a phenomenal shoe. And like you said, the technology is there for it to be great and for it to be above and beyond what what most of the competition is doing, really. But without a face on it, and still trying to live off of Michael Jordan's legacy with it, it doesn't really fit into the mold that really Nike created. Like they created the demand that we all kind of fell into as like, oh, I want to be, wearing, like Russ said earlier, I want to wear the best shoe from the best player from the best team. This is it, and they don't have that right now, and I don't really know how they're going to get that because there's a lot of competition in the NBA, and even with a guy like LeBron, I don't know that he even like he's almost like not even in that conversation because you can't compare him to a Jordan because he doesn't have like you have all these other elements. You have social media, you have the fact that he's going to be on massive amounts of paid endorsement deals where Michael was on them, but we didn't think, oh, Michael's getting paid to drink Gatorade. We all thought, I want to be like Mike. I'm going to drink some Gatorade. Like now it's a completely different world. So unless a player, I think if a player is groomed to really like be a superstar celebrity through social media, and I think this is where like the intersection of like what Kanye has been able to do versus what athletes do. Entertainers have a lot, like a lot of influence on what goes on in the world of fashion, of sports and all that. So until you get a player that fully grasps that and can kind of run with that and be like, the J.R. Smith or the Swaggy P and also be the best player in the league, you're not going to see a pinnacle shoe to the level that it once was for Jordan or for any other brand for that matter.
Well, I guess to piggyback on sort of what Nick said, like, Jordan kind of built this paradox for themselves where it's like, if a player is good enough to be compared to Jordan or to somehow be seen as better than Jordan, like, they're not going to want Jordan's name on their shoe ahead of theirs. I don't think LeBron or Kobe or, those guys would have even signed with Jordan. Like, I feel like that's part of the reason they'd rather be on Nike and kind of build their own thing and do what Jordan did. They don't want to be seen as like a subsidiary of Jordan, essentially, which is the trouble of having such a visible former athlete as the name of your company. And I think by the same token, someone like a Dwayne Wade or even a Russell Westbrook, if Jordan is like, hey, we want you to be the face of our flagship shoe of the 28 or the 29 or the 30, which I'm very curious to see, you're going to think like, well, wait a minute. If I'm good enough to be the top Jordan guy, why don't I have my own shoe? And that's the thing. For Wade, like, it worked for a little bit, and then he got his own anyway. Westbrook got his own off-court shoe, which is an interesting way of sort of dodging that bullet. Maybe that'll work for them for a while, although I agree with Nick that as great as Westbrook is, I don't know if he's like, that guy. So, I don't know what the answer is. They can keep signing guys like Kawhi Leonard, who's fantastic, and have him wear the shoe, but, I don't know if you're going to get the best player in the NBA to wear a shoe named for, and as long as Tinker's doing it, designed for somebody else. That's a lot for someone to take whose ego has to be ridiculously large just to get them to where they are. It's like that's like a 1 in a billion chance. Like, well, more than that because there's more than a billion people, but whatever. I don't know if that person exists. who'd be willing to kind of do that.
So Brandon, would you think the solution be maybe they just take the Jordan name off? Maybe not the signature line, but like Westbrook has his shoe as a, like kind of what Russ said, as a subsidiary of Jordan brand. So Jordan transcends this is the player and it's a brand as opposed to the player. So now we have the Westbrook on court shoe, whatever they call it, the Westbrook OC1 as opposed to the Westbrook 0. Is that kind of the solution to kind of start to build a legacy around the other players?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's great that they're getting their names on the shoes and they're getting the opportunity to create something for themselves. But at the end of the day, I think we all know where it's coming from. We all know what it's going back to. It's part of Jordan brand. That's what he is. I mean, it's the same as when you look at, musicians that have their labels built off something else, like Lil Wayne having Young Money off Cash Money. You still recognize it as Cash Money every day. It's kind of the same concept in my opinion. So I don't know if it's really something where they're standing on their own by doing that. Obviously it's great for the player, especially if they can get, better financial situation out of it, more branding out of it, all that stuff. I don't think that that's the answer. Kind of back to what Russ and Nick said, like these guys they're warriors, they're tremendous athletes with egos, and until they're standing on their own too, the way LeBron, Curry, Kobe, all these guys are, it's really not the same. I don't see how you can mask it any other way.
So should we just separate the Jordan athletes from the signature line with maybe, I don't know, just going through it in my head here. Maybe we just don't have a signature athlete attached to the Jordan signature line. Maybe they all just have like their own thing. Is that the way to give them their own room to breathe, but still let Jordan be Jordan and let them be a part of the brand, I guess? I now that you guys say that and thinking about it, I'm sorry, I know I'm kind of rambling here, but I feel like it puts the Jordan athletes at a disadvantage to the Nike athletes, because the Nike athletes at the end of
it does. Basically, I was just going to say, if you look at the roster that Jordan Brand's had since they initially started signing people in the late 90s, I mean, it's always been people that are strong, that are marketable, but it hasn't been, the top 3, top 5 players. You look at people like Ray Allen, who obviously was amazing in his prime, people like Darius Miles, Quentin Richardson, Mike Bibby, you can go up and down the line. They're great, they're recognizable, they're people that were into sneakers that obviously could play, but, they weren't the LeBrons, they weren't the Kobes, they weren't that. So it's kind of a gift and a curse. It was a gift to be associated with Jordan, because I think just having that, the weight that carries being a Jordan athlete obviously is a great thing, but at the same time it's kind of a curse, because you knew it probably wasn't going to go much further than that, and that's likely why Wade left and decided to do his own thing with Li Ning. Did I say that right? I've never said it out loud before, I don't think.
I think it's leaning, but close enough.
Leaning? All right, cool.
I think so.
I always imagine it as
leaning
myself, or whatever.
Yeah. I think one thing that, like, not to wish bad things upon somebody, but like I think it's actually interesting that Brandon used the Cash Money, Young Money, Cash Money reference, because the analogy is actually kind of interesting, and I've kind of always, this is definitely way for another day, but I've always wondered like what that looks like. Like at some point, does Jordan want to do his own thing? Like, and is this the start of like the trying to figure it out? Because I think we all anticipated that the 23 would be the last Jordan, and it didn't happen. And now I think we're in that same place with the 30, but it's become less of an annual thing. There's a lot of flexibility as to when it releases now. Like there's always the birthday release, but it doesn't necessarily always, it just doesn't seem to have the same consistency over the last couple of years. But I wonder, like, if that's, like you said, maybe it becomes something where if an athlete is signed to the brand, because they're doing PEs and they're doing, all these custom logos for all these guys. So does that ever equate to, like, okay, the Blake Griffin line, like the Westbrook line, the Chris Paul line, like they do it with all of these guys, get their own little things. But maybe that is the future. Maybe it needs to be broken down, because, kind of like how with the internet, like you're more likely to buy something that's localized to you, in my opinion. Like that represents your favorite player, your favorite color, team, whatever that is. Maybe that is something that becomes a part of the picture, and it's just, like Russ said though, like the challenge is like finding those people that don't have the ego, because it's always going to have that Jumpman logo on it at this point. Like they're never going to go away from that because that's what's so really recognizable and iconic about Jordan.
If Jordan was named, Eakin, for lack of a better word, named Eakin, it wouldn't be such a big thing, I think. The Eakin 3 or whatever would be fine, as opposed to the Jordan 30, where it's attached, it represents that player. And for that player to have such a huge personality and huge presence and known globally, how does an athlete on that roster separate himself from that person while still being a part of that individual label? Yeah, it's interesting. Good points. Good points, guys. Points. Good points. See, now I'm thinking. So, audience, the guys that are listening, thank you for tuning in to part 2. Let us know what you think. What's the future of the Jordan signature line? What's the future of retros? We want to thank you guys for tuning in. Obviously, we appreciate you guys for listening. Thank you to our special guest, Russ Bengtson. Round of applause for the sneaker guy.
Anytime.
Sneaker guy. Really honored. Really, honestly, really happy.
If you guys out there watching haven't read Russ's slam cover with Iverson back in like 2000 when he had the full fro, that's what made me want to write about sneakers. That is seriously like my favorite magazine feature story of all time. So if you guys get a chance, check that out online.
I would definitely co-sign that. I mean, it's been an honor and a pleasure, like, getting to know you and becoming friends with you, Russ, because I definitely looked up to you for years before I even got to start writing about sneakers. So I definitely appreciate you. No, I appreciate you, what you've done, and how you've helped all this happen, because really, like, it's no joke that this whole business, started from your love of sneakers, and it allowed us all to kind of really realize, like, hey, there's some dude that's just as crazy about me out there, like, into these things. So thanks for coming on, and thanks for sharing.
So if you guys haven't already,
definitely.
Russ writes for Complex. He does the Russ Report on Fridays, which I am lobbying to turn into some sort of video series. But apparently it hasn't happened yet. No one's listening to my emails that I'm sending to tips@complex.com. Apparently nobody cares. But if you haven't followed Russ, it's Russ Bengtson, @Russ Bengtson, T before the S. Make sure you get that right, because I screw it up every time I tweet at him. I am Jacques Slade. You can find me all over the web. It's all under Cousteau, Kustoo. This is Outside the Box, the podcast, which is definitely representative of the sneaker world. And there's 2 guys here that really hold the weight. Again, I'm just here to run my mouth. So just give a big shout out to Brandon. Brandon, give them all your information.
Hey, thanks everybody. You can follow me at Mr. Brando3, MrBrando3, and make sure to follow my main man Nick Engvall. What do you got, Nick?
Nick Engvall, NickEngv as in Victor, ALL, just my name. On all the platforms I use that. And once again, thanks to Russ for going a little long with us and making this conversation happen, because it was definitely enjoyable for me, and I hope everybody that's listening enjoyed it as well.
No doubt. Thank you, guys. We'll do this again.
Definitely. All right, guys. Outside the box. Hashtag. Follow that. Tweet us. Let us know what you think, and we'll see you guys next time. Peace.